Streaming live across the country, tackling the topics everyone is talking about online. Share, engage, and interact. This is Newsfeed Now.
Wednesday morning, everyone. Best news of the day. You have made it. You are halfway through the work week. It is hump day, and we are starting your day off right with a little bit of Newsfeed Now. In today's show, we're taking a look at some big votes that are going on Capitol Hill, something you're going to want to hear about, and also how the pandemic is causing more young people to fall victims to scams. We've all been there. And a man arrested after what he called a ritual. A very disturbing story there. And how one musician helped with, yes, I'm about to say it, the Mars rover. A musician helping out with that. It's a crazy story. We have a lot going on, but of course, we want to start on Capitol Hill. Votes right now are center stage in Washington, D.C. Lawmakers in the House are debating expanding access to the polls while the Supreme Court looks at whose vote should really count. Washington correspondent Kelly Meyer has the latest in those developments.
The Supreme Court considered Tuesday whether two Arizona voting rules discriminate against minorities.
The desire to enhance the convenience of voting must never outweigh the imperative of securing the integrity of the results.
The case challenges two state policies that allow a vote to be thrown out if it was cast at the wrong precinct and prohibit someone from delivering another person's completed ballot. Arizona Republicans say the laws prevent election fraud. Democrats argue the policies violate Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act.
If you just can't vote for those reasons and your vote is not being counted, you've been denied the right to vote, haven't you?
A win in Arizona for this case could make it harder to cast a ballot, but some in Congress are working to safeguard voting rights.
H.R. 1 gives voters choices.
Lawmakers debated legislation Tuesday they say would expand Americans' access to the ballot box, reduce the influence of big money in politics, and strengthen ethics rules.
I rise not only in opposition to this bill, but in strong opposition.
Republicans criticized the effort, saying Democrats want to federalize election laws. The White House wants the bill to move forward.
It is a priority to the president.
A final House vote on the bill is expected Wednesday. Reporting in Washington, I'm Kelly Meyer.
We want to bring in Kelly Meyer joining us now from our nation's capital. And Kelly, I feel like this is really on the forefront right now because voting was so different this year in the presidential election because of the pandemic.
Yeah, I think that's why you're seeing this. They're saying, in the wake of the 2020 election and all of these questions surrounding, election integrity and fraud and making sure our elections are safe and secure and things like that on both sides of the aisle. You're seeing this voting rights legislation package moving through in the House, and then you're seeing this being taken up in the Supreme Court. But back to the House bill, H.R. 1, what they're saying it will do is expand Americans' access to the ballot box, reduce the influence of big money in politics, strengthen ethics rules for public servants, and implement other anti-corruption measures for the purpose, they say, of fortifying our democracy and for other purposes. But when I talk with Republicans about this, I just talked with Florida Republican Senator Marco Rubio, because that's where it's likely to head next. He says it's really just about, federalizing the election system. It's not something he supports. So it's very much a partisan issue, not a bipartisan issue, as you've heard in that package there from some of the Republican lawmakers in the House weighing in. So it's going to be interesting seeing how it moves forward when it gets to the Senate and what kind of discussion comes up there.
Yeah, like you said, it's really divided among party lines, and something a lot of people are watching, because when it comes to voting, people want to know it's safe, people want to know it's secure, and they want to know that there are no issues when they go to pass their ballot.
Yeah, absolutely. And in what's happening in the Supreme Court, they're saying they want to make sure you can get your ballot to the polling site. And they were discussing this issue of, some people not having the chance to cast it in their precinct due to their ability to get to the poll, or maybe if they needed someone to take it for them because they couldn't cast it themselves. And what's fair and equal in making sure that your vote matters. And they were investigating what really goes into the rules surrounding that. So, those Supreme Court decisions generally come out in the month of June, so they have some time to decide in this case, but that was heard yesterday, and that's going to be another big one that could change the future of voting in the country.
All eyes on voting right now. Kelly, thanks so much for joining us out of our nation's capital. Kelly Meyer. And Congress appears poised to pass President Biden's emergency COVID relief package. A lot of people wondering, is this going to happen? But it'll be a very close vote in the Senate. Washington correspondent Alexander Limon takes a look at what we can expect in the coming days.
We're now on track to have enough vaccine supply for every adult in America by the end of May.
President Joe Biden says his administration has made great strides in dealing with the coronavirus pandemic, and he wants that progress to continue.
This is a national imperative that we get our kids back into the classroom safely and as soon as possible.
The president says for schools and businesses to fully reopen and life to return to normal, Congress needs to pass his $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan. That's why the president worked with Senate Democrats on Tuesday to ensure enough support for the package that would deliver money for vaccines, schools, unemployment, stimulus checks, and more.
American people are overwhelmingly in support of this legislation. A majority of Democrats, independents, and in many polls Republicans support this bill. It seems the only group that doesn't support this bill are Senate Republicans and House Republicans.
Democratic leader Chuck Schumer said the Senate will move forward with the bill as soon as possible, but Republicans criticized the legislative package, saying it's full of items unrelated to the pandemic.
So we'll be fighting this in every way that we can. It is my hope that at the end, Senate Republicans will unanimously oppose it.
Democrats hope to have voting in the Senate done by the end of the week so that the House can vote on a final version of that package as soon as Monday, because that funding will be running out towards the end of this month. Let's talk about this, something that I hate to admit, but I have fallen victim to this. Maybe Steve has as well. Online purchasing certainly been the way to buy things while in quarantine, but that's also catapulted young people to likely being scammed. You know, falling for that stuff on Instagram. I've done it before. Adults age 18 to 24 reported the highest median losses over the past year, pulling even with the 65 plus crowd, an age group that traditionally sees the highest median in the loss. You know, they get scammed pretty often. Every year, the Better Business Bureau releases their annual scam risk tracker, rating the riskiest scams and the scams that cost victims the most money. Troy Baker from the BBB says a lot of young people were actually suckered in by social media.
Scrolling through Instagram, click buy, you know, the product that they want, that they see advertised there, and hope that it comes. What a lot of people don't understand is just because it's advertised on Instagram or Facebook doesn't mean it's legitimate.
We want to bring in Emily Leonard joining us now from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Emily, I'm sure you heard me talking about, I got scammed myself. I wanted to buy these shark wine glasses on Instagram. I clicked, I did the PayPal, and I never got it. This is happening to a lot of people.
Yeah, you're certainly not alone. I mean, think about it. What did we all do during quarantine? Sit there and scroll through our phones alone at home and do some shopping. And that's what would happen is you'd see that shark glass on Instagram or Facebook, and you'd click through, and some of those websites were no good. And that's why we're seeing the age group of 18 to 24 move up in the rankings this year for riskiest scams as being taken advantage of.
And after talking with Troy, what were the tips he gave you? How do you know if a website's legit? How do you know how to pay? How do you make sure that you're not getting scammed, especially the younger generation?
He said, do your homework. Check out the website. You know, maybe Google some things. See if you can find that item that you are really in love with from a more reputable website. Is it on Amazon? Is it an easier way to get it that way? Really need to do your homework. Don't be such an impulse buyer.
And I am an impulse buyer to fault. Emily, thanks so much for joining us out of Grand Rapids. Great tips there, guys. You got to be careful. Everyone can get suckered, including myself. Now we want to go to the latest with the pandemic. Researchers say there could be a way to predict severe COVID-19 cases. Deanna Baer has more.
The answer flows in the blood. Until now, there was no definitive way to chart a patient's course, but there are known risk factors like obesity, high blood pressure, and diabetes. Yale researchers hope to change that.
As you know, there's such a wide spectrum of disease, from patients who are completely asymptomatic to other patients who have far prolonged hospitalization course requiring breathing tubes and ultimately may die from the disease.
But with a simple blood draw, Yale researchers struck gold.
What we focused on were these proteins that are circulating in the blood.
They identified 5 key proteins in the blood were elevated in the COVID-19 patients who went on to become critically ill.
We used blood samples collected within 24 hours of arriving at the hospital. And what we saw is that these same 5 proteins are actually elevated on day one of hospitalization. And the really remarkable thing was that they predicted which of the patients who were initially not severely ill, were initially admitted to the hospital floor, which of those patients would ultimately become critically ill and need to go to the intensive care unit.
The predictive proteins are associated with what's called neutrophils, a type of white blood cell.
They are one of the first lines of defense against infection.
The counts remained low in those who never developed severe illness.
We think that it's very possible that neutrophils are actually driving a lot of this severe disease. And one of the reasons we think that is that even though neutrophils are great defenders against pathogens like bacteria and viruses, they cause a lot of collateral damage. They're not precision fighters. They can really wreak havoc in the tissue.
The neutrophils are necessary for the body to mount an early response to SARS-CoV-2, but in the later stages, they add to the damage in the body. So, blocking the activation of the neutrophils and tamping down the inflammation may be the target for new and known therapies for earlier intervention and better outcomes.
And hopefully, what we're contributing to the field at the moment will hopefully one day turn into better ways to diagnose and treat these patients.
The researchers hope to confirm their findings in future clinical studies with the goal of developing a diagnostic blood test that could be used regularly in the hospital setting to help determine which patients will require more intense interventions. Back to you.
Thanks so much. Let's continue with talking about the ongoing pandemic. A 23-year-old nurse from Florida is now at home after spending months recovering from the virus complications at a Massachusetts hospital. Melissa Marino has that story for us.
It's been such a long and emotional journey, and today very emotional. His family so happy to be home. They say Desmond is happy to be home, and they think this is going to help in his recovery.
This emotional moment, everything the Silva family has been praying for.
To see Desmond happy again, being back in Florida is everything to him. He misses his friends, his family.
It has been long awaited and highly anticipated.
23-year-old Desmond Silva is still on a ventilator and paralyzed from the neck down. He's been in the hospital since the summer after complications from the coronavirus. Aid on Your Side was there when his family raised money to have him flown to Massachusetts for medical treatment. And today, a big moment. Jet ICU made sure he had a way home, donating his flight.
We're all healthcare workers together. We're all in this together. And once we found out that he was a nurse and a Tampa Bay resident, we decided we had to jump in and help out.
We really weren't sure how we were going to get home, so we do appreciate it.
Home and a step closer to recovery. Desmond still has a long road ahead. He'll be home and need around-the-clock care, intense therapy, on top of already mounting medical expenses. But he is determined not only to walk again, but return to his career as a nurse. Most of all, he's grateful for all of the support.
They all played a pivotal role in, my recovery and, as well as saving my life.
Desmond still has a very long road to recovery ahead. If you would like to help, there is a fund set up, and I've put more information on our website and our WFLA app. In Tampa, Melissa Marino, 8 on Your Side.
We are happy Desmond's home and wish him the best in his recovery. Melissa, thanks so much. Well, we do have a warning regarding our next story that's going to come up. We're going to talk about that in just a little. But first, we want to talk about San Diego ComicCon, the largest convention in North America, just announced it's not going to be held in person this year. Organizers say that they're encouraged by the vaccinations that are underway, but they believe July is still just too early to safely hold that in-person event. Instead, that event, like so many others, are going to be held virtually over 3 days from July 23rd to July 25th. ComicCon International says it's planning an in-person convention in San Diego to be held in November of 2021, as long as everything is getting better. If you did buy a badge for this year's ComicCon, organizers say you can have it rolled over to the next convention in 2022, or you can request a refund. Now back to that story I was talking about in the South. We do want to warn you, this next trending story, the details may be disturbing to some. A Tennessee man has been arrested after a disturbing case of animal cruelty. This is a really hard one to even read. Deputies say that this man right here, Brandon Langford, told them he needed to bury his dog at a home in Hillsborough. They say Langford told them he had stabbed a dog in order to get rid of the demons inside of his house. He's now charged with animal cruelty. Oh, this is such an alarming story coming out of Nashville, Tennessee. We want to bring in Alex Corradetti. Alex, have you learned anything more about this? This is just something that's very hard to hear.
Most disturbing stories that I know that I've come across in the newsroom here, but we're all just very disturbed reading it. This morning I did reach out to see if Langford had made bail. I haven't heard back just yet. He is expected in court in April on the 26th, but just reading this yesterday, there are details that we didn't even put in this story because it's that disturbing and we don't want to upset anyone. So really, we don't know the reasoning behind this other than, what Langford told the Coffee County Sheriff's deputies, that he felt that he had to stab this dog to rid the home of demons. So I know there were a few witnesses to this as well that told deputies that Langford had actually handed the dog to a juvenile first and then took the dog and put it on a kitchen table and stabbed it twice, once in the neck and then once in the body. So it is hard to say this story. I do know that it was a small dog and we're still kind of following this story for updates, but it's almost too hard to talk about. I know yesterday when I was talking about it on our show, I kind of felt choked up about it just because I feel like this kind of thing is unexplainable and it's something that there really is no reasoning for.
And obviously something that law enforcement is taking very seriously.
Right, and that's something we were talking about too. I mean, usually with these cases, the bond isn't set so high, but this time it was $30,000, which we feel that we see a lot more of these animal cruelty cases now. And I feel like, law enforcement across the country, they're really stepping up to locate these animals and help if there is still time to help. Unfortunately, this time the dog did die. So hopefully this doesn't happen again, and hopefully people can hear this and just keep in mind to be kind to animals. They are helpless, and we're the only people that can help them, really.
Very disturbing out of Nashville, Tennessee. Alex, thanks so much for sharing that with us. Something obviously we'll continue to follow as that goes through the courts. Well, let's talk about maybe a positive animal story. This is No Fish Tale. Of Virginia fisherman reeled in a big whopper last week. He tells Tamara Scott how he was able to catch such a beast, and it's huge.
This was truly a team effort, and I spoke with the father-son duo who helped reel it in. I'm told it was truly fantastic.
This thing is absolutely ginormous.
The moment of a lifetime.
Oh my God.
The moment Josiah and his son caught this huge bluefin fish.
I was absolutely in awe. I had no idea. I was not expecting on catching like an almost 10-foot long fish. I mean, I just never dreamed of it.
Josiah said they boarded their 22-foot Grady white boat with 3 friends at 4 a.m. in the Outer Banks, hoping to see something worthwhile. This definitely made the list.
I think at around 8:15, we hooked up on a fish that we had like maybe an hour. It wasn't long, and we hooked up. I mean, we had no idea what we hooked up. I mean, we knew it was a bluefin. And this, honestly, this was our first bluefin that we ever caught on this boat. It will probably be the last bluefin we'll catch on this boat.
It took a lot of muscle because its estimate weight is 1,000 pounds.
When we were reeling the fish in about 3/4 of the way through, our reel actually broke and it would no longer turn. And so we had this 1,000-pound fish on the line, and we actually had to take another reel, tear off a ton of line real quick, and recrimp like both those lines together all while the fish was on there. It was insane.
I asked if there was ever a thought to give up and let him free.
No, not once. No, we were going to fight that thing until the end, even if it took us into the nighttime. I mean, there's no way.
Now, Josiah told me it took about 2 hours for them to fillet the fish, and he says from now on he's going to go after smaller fish like yellowfin or maybe mahi. At least that's until they get a bigger boat. Tamara Scott, 10 on your side.
Tamara, they definitely need a bigger boat. Steve said, how'd they not sink the boat? That thing weighed 1,000 pounds. And no wonder why it took 2 hours to fillet. I just want them to send some this way. It was probably pretty good. But before we go, a musician helped put a microphone on Mars, y'all. That's a real thing. Rich DeMiro has the story.
It's the Martian breeze heard around the world.
That little puff of wind is what saved the day, because that's the actual sound of the planet.
Touchdown confirmed. Perseverance safely on the surface of Mars.
For the first time ever, a Mars rover captured audio on the red planet.
And it worked, which is amazing.
Jason Achilles Mazilis was on the team that made the recording possible. The LA-based musician figured his studio smarts could help put the right mic on Perseverance. NASA accepted his proposal and testing began.
There is absolutely no guarantee that this thing would survive in deep space during launch, during descent, on the surface, nothing.
Mics on 2 previous Mars missions failed. But this is what made it on board, an off-the-shelf mic that retails for a few $1,000s.
You can see it's a 1/2-inch diaphragm condenser microphone.
And although the mic didn't collect usable data during the descent, it did work for this.
And it was just immense relief. I was just like, oh, thank God.
As the sound continues to rack up millions of listens, Jason's unlikely path includes advice that's loud and clear.
If anybody else is out there doing it, you can do it.
I don't even think he wants to be paid for that because that's so cool. How do you tell your kids that, or your grandkids? Check this out. I put a mic on Mars. What a cool way to end our show today. Thanks so much for joining us on Newsfeed Now. Don't forget, all these stories are also on your website. You can rewatch this as many times as you want. Steve's going to rewatch it right now. Hope you join us right back here tomorrow. Same place, same time for more trending stories. Bye.